Okay, it looks like we're recording. Hi, everyone. It's Gordon Einstein, your Dubai resident corporate attorney. And I have a really special guest today, a guest who helped me personally. This one's really special. So we have Diana Hamade. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. Who is an actual attorney from Dubai, not just an import. And she is an expert in many things, but including family law. And she helped me. So Diana, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you on. How are you?
And thank you, Gordon, for hosting me on your very entertaining and informative show. I am glad to be here today. And I hope that this discussion, this call, this talk will actually benefit people.
I think it will. I think it's going to benefit people who are situated like me, which is a lot of my audience. So everyone, just for context, if you know, I think most people know this. When I came to Dubai, I was ending a marriage. I completed that process of ending it. So, better for worse. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But then I found the love of my life and got married here. Neither one of us is Emirati, obviously, and neither one of us is Muslim. But we wanted to act quickly, and we wanted to take advantage or make use of the local infrastructure for getting married. Now, hopefully not with us, but of course, when people get married, they can also possibly get divorced. And if you get married here, there may be a consequence in terms of your divorce. And also, what happens if you get married here and have kids here? What happens if you move here and then you're with a family and you are now subject to the law of the region? It's very confusing for someone like me. Even me as an attorney had trouble parsing it all out. So Diana was nice enough to take us on as clients and help with our marriage. And now everything's good. Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Let's just dive right in, and we'll kind of get to biography later, but I want to deliver value for the audience. To walk me through the marriage process for someone who's not from here in the UAE, and then I'll hand it to you, and you can take it from there.
Okay, so let me take your marriage as an example. So Gordon comes to me and he says, I want to get married in Dubai because I'm based in Dubai. My residence visa is in Dubai, and I want to get married here. And I look at the requirements of Dubai courts for marriage of non-Muslims, and I see that there is a document that was required, and that document is not easily issued or processed. So I advise Gordon to get married in Abu Dhabi. And that is why Abu Dhabi, ADJD, has the highest rate of marriages of expats and non-Muslims in the UAE, because they don't require that specific document. Another lawyer may have not even known these things. That's the difference between having a lawyer who appears before the courts and actually goes to court, and a lawyer that is literally sitting in an office and getting all the information mostly by social media or literally proper media. So the idea here is every case that comes, every matter that comes with its own twists, its own issues. And this is what a lawyer is meant to deal with. It's not that just like basic information. That's what I tell my clients, please do not think that what you read in newspapers, in magazines, what you see on social media is actually the law. No, it's not. It's just what they think, believe, heard of the law. The law is completely different. The law is what is issued in legislation, what is practiced before forums, which are whether they're litigation, arbitration, dispute resolution, whether it's the mainstream or the alternative. So this is very technical. So please, instead of spending all your money later to solve a problem, get the advice. And this is what I like about some of my clients. Before even they relocate from wherever they are to the UAE, they get that advice. They send me a list of questions. So Diana, I intend to come to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, to Sharjah. I want to live there. I got a job. I got an employment. I got an opportunity for investing or whatever. I'm buying a property. What are the, you know, the what should I expect? What should I think? What should I know?
I think it's the
before I do
rules, the
that?
process, and the traps.
Exactly.
Is maybe a good way to think about it.
Exactly. And the main three questions I get from everyone almost. If I want to get married there, do I need a post-nuptial agreement, a prenuptial agreement? What kind of an agreement should I get into? If I am moving to Dubai with my family, most people would actually want to come to the UAE with their families because of what we enjoy. The safety, the good standard of education, the high standard of living to a certain extent, where everything is available, the help that you can still get here, while in other countries are quite impossible. So mainly people come here for what attracts them in the UAE. And when they come with their families, the questions mainly focus on what happens with the children in the event we ever decide to divorce in the UAE. So mainly it's the divorce, and then the main focus would be children. And the children are always problematic than a marriage and a divorce put together.
It sounds like, yes. I'm familiar with all this stuff a little bit just because I went through the California process, but you have the analogies which are imperfect when you're coming from abroad to here, and there's all these nuances. So let's dive into a little bit into the technicalities. How long has it been the case that non-Emiratis or non-Muslims were able to get married in the country?
So when could they marry here? Is that the question?
Yes. Was it always legally allowed, or is that kind of new, like a civil marriage?
So yes. So we started, 20 years ago, allowing everyone to marry before the local courts. If you're resident in Dubai, you can marry before Dubai courts. If you're resident in Abu Dhabi, you can marry before Abu Dhabi courts. No matter what your nationality, your religion was. Of course, that was like even before, since the course actually opened in the UAE, which is probably more than 40 years now, even 50 years. So the idea was that everyone could marry here, but the marriage of everyone, for instance, before the local courts, needed a wali, which was the mother, the father of the bride or her uncle in the event that it was very problematic. It was very cumbersome. It was like not what the non-locals, non-Muslims wanted. So along the way, the UAE courts were just overwhelmed with the number of people wanting to marry. So they said that was the rule, the interim between when the courts would marry everyone and the special courts being set up for that purpose. It was,
okay, so I think that's important to highlight because I went through this myself. So it used, if I understand what you just said correctly, let me repeat it back. It used to be the case. So there's been non-Muslims marriages acknowledged and performed here for a long time. It used to be a function of the main courts, and they had some requirements that people who maybe aren't from here found a little bit difficult to deal with. I mean, how do you get someone's mom and how do you get someone's dad in from Poland?
Exactly.
What do you do exactly? And what I'm hearing is that there's a series of reforms, for lack of a better word. And the two main things I heard is there's a specialized court system for marriages, and there's a streamlined process associated with those courts. Is that correct?
Currently, this is the position. This is the status quo. Now we have specialized registrars in courts that do register foreign expatriate non-Muslims marriages. In the interim, these people, the same people who are expatriates and non-Muslims, could go to their embassies, could go to their religious forums here, churches, temples, and they could get married there as long as they could have the stamp, to attest it at the stations, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the relevant authorities. Now we have specialized courts, specialized registrars, which actually made life much easier for everyone. But I have to warn everyone against the fact that because now when you hear that Abu Dhabi ADJD is getting the biggest number, 20,000 marriages have been performed in ADJD in the last 2-3 years, I think, which is enormous.
That's a
But
lot.
that is because Abu Dhabi does not require that specific document that the federal courts or the law, the courts that apply the federal law require. So this is one of the issues, one of the bits that a local lawyer who has the experience would actually immediately advise you on.
And I remember this issue. I mean, I don't want to make this the Gordon show, but I think it's relevant because I actually worked with you. I remember us maybe wrestling with that issue because there was a question of timing and location. And Irene and I just wanted to get things moving along. And you and I had a good conversation, and you sent me down the right path. And I think a lot of people without the legal counsel would have just gone the Dubai route because in their mind, Dubai is kind of like Las Vegas. You just make it happen quickly and, no fuss, no muss, but it's really not.
It is not Las Vegas, and it is not like, okay, I wouldn't really want to use that term because it's not the right term. The registrar in Abu Dhabi in ADJD courts is a registrar of the courts, is court, and there is a law that regulates this marriage. But the point is that it's kind of easier than the federal law applied in the rest of the courts in the UAE.
Understood. Now, just out of curiosity, if two non-Emirati Muslims want to get married, say they're from Indonesia, just for example, where do they go?
So the idea here is that the Muslims can still marry before the local courts, which are mainly exclusive now for Muslim marriages, despite the fact that they are not UAE nationals, but they are residents of the UAE. Now, what happens if this Indonesian who is a Muslim would like actually to marry not the Muslim marriage?
That was, of course, my next question.
Civil marriage, yes. But the civil marriage, can they? Yes, they can. Exclusively in ADJD, in Abu Dhabi. Not the other federal, the other courts that are applying the federal law. Because the marriage is also literally restricted to non-Muslims. The civil marriage is restricted to non-Muslims.
Okay, so let me repeat that back. So if you're both non-Muslim or one of you is not Muslim, then it's the Abu Dhabi special court system. Yes?
Depends who is that non-Muslim. Remember, we still have in Islam that rule. If he's a Muslim man, he can marry a non-Muslim woman.
Right, yes.
But a Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim man. So when you talk about being a Muslim and a non-Muslim in one marriage, again, if the man is a Muslim, he will not be able to marry in the federal courts, in the courts that apply the federal law. He will only be able to marry in the ADJD court. The idea here is that, honestly, this is when everyone needs specific legal advice that is targeted and focused on their own matter. Because you will not believe how simple sometimes the question can be and how complicated the matter would be in terms of a process, in terms of a result.
I completely understood. And I think we both have the same maybe frustration sometimes, which is clients think they know the answer for the reasons you said, whether it's social media or friends or something. And the way it's written down even may be technically correct, but there's always some little nuance. And the reason clients go crazy with lawyers is because we always say it depends. But the answer is it really does depend. Because there really is sometimes a factor that will completely flip the script. It's an exception that it dominates the rule. So I think you're getting into the interesting nuance here. And yes, you helped me thread the needle nicely. So I appreciate it. Okay, now let's kind of go through the life cycle of a marriage. So
yes,
and let's do it for a non-Muslim couple, because I think that's at least half the show who's watching. So it's kind of interesting. I'm getting a lot of followers in Saudi Arabia all of a sudden. So who knows? It's a diverse show. So we get married, we're happy, blah, 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 blah. We have kids here, and as opposed to importing them. To the extent that you can answer this, I mean, how are those children viewed under law?
It actually doesn't matter whether you have the children in the UAE or you have them abroad and then you bring them in. The only, I would say, problematic issue would be if this child is born in the UAE without a marriage. So the idea here is that the problem that people face here with what is allowed now, which is cohabitation, you have to understand now under UAE law, it's not a criminal offense anymore to cohabitate without a marriage. It's not criminally, offensive, and everybody is doing it. Couples are living together, they don't have to be married. But now, okay, wow, she got pregnant. So Diana, what do we do? Do we leave? Does she have to have the child abroad? Can she have the child here? Sometimes it's because this was one of the most problematic, most intensely, if I may say,
Well, I'll jump in. I personally was looking at this issue, and that was part of our desire to get things moving along, because you can go into the detail, but from at least from a legal perspective and from an insurance perspective, it seemed challenging to have. Look, I'm pretty old. Okay, so for my generation, you have kids in marriage. Okay, but things are evolving, especially in the West. But my preference was in marriage. But there's also seemed to be a legal consequence and an insurance consequence to not doing it in marriage. For example, when we were getting our health insurance, looking at maternity coverage, they were checking, are you married? And we were like hitting a roadblock to getting that done. Then when we got married, we called the insurance carrier and we said, okay, now put married, add maternity coverage, and they're like, no problem, here, go. So it's a thicket that if you're from the United States, California, you're not going to be looking for, but you got to be sensitive to. So yes, please continue. So
yes, I understand. The insurance would be another issue, but mainly here it would be, so you can have a child here. It's not forbidden like it used to be before. Previously, if a woman had to have a child here and she wasn't married to the father, they would have had to literally go to court, appear before a judge with all documents to prove that the marriage did not the pregnancy did not extend 6 months. There was like a lot of problematic issues in it. Now all they have to do is appear before a judge and say, we are here requesting the court to affirm our parentage of the child. Everybody asked that question, do we have to get married? Previously, you would have to be married. Now, not any longer. So the marriage is not actually required for instance, in Abu Dhabi, for that specific reason to have a parentage of the child. Previously, it was required. Now, the idea here is that in Dubai, it would still be required. I think lately I had a case where the woman was my client, and we appeared before the judge here, and the judge required them to be married. And then we explained to the judge that the law did not really require it. And actually in Dubai, even now, it's the case, because I can't really, between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, we even are getting confused as lawyers, because every day there's something new happening. You can't believe how the family law came from in the UAE, from a law that was untouchable, not a certain amendment used to be even allowed to be considered. That was what, since 2005, since the law of the UAE person status law was issued, until 3 years ago, when I could just say in 2021, in 2021, the first law in Abu Dhabi was introduced, and it became the land of progressive law. Every day there's something new in the family law, to the extent that we as family lawyers have this group and we always chat on it and we say, okay, so yesterday, did anyone dream of a law? Because actually this is what we think. Has anyone had this idea of a new decree coming in place? Because even the 2005, which is now the only law that deals with Muslims in terms of personal status law, is actually been amended since 2019. Serious amendments that we didn't
I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly? The law relating to Muslims has been amended? Did I hear
The
that correctly?
Muslims law has been also subject to a series of amendments since 2019 until today. Sometimes I think some of these amendments were just kind of not necessarily substantial, but some of them are so substantial that I would have to mention this. You do not know how much we fought for a mother to be the guardian of the education in her family, of her children. The guardianship of education was mainly a father guardianship. And we had the most, intense disputes on that matter. And I remember in the old days, I got a judgment for an English woman, an English mother against a German father, because the father wanted to move the children from an English school to a German school because he believed that they needed to learn the German language. And the mother said, Diana, I can't help the children with their learning, with their studies. And I'm the one who is a stay-home mother. And he wouldn't get them tutors. So I have to do all the teaching. I'm not going to accept this. You have to give me that guardianship to keep the children in the same school. And I remember when I appealed.
Sorry, just so I'm clear, the parents were married at that point or separated or divorced?
They were going through a divorce, and the father immediately used his guardianship to move the children to another school. And that was a tool that all fathers used at that time to undermine the mother's life with the children. And I remember when I appeared before the judge and said, Your Honor, this woman doesn't speak German. How can she teach children all these subjects in German? And she's the stay-home mother. And he's not going to pay for tutors. And he said, that is something worthy of thinking about. Let me think about it, counsel. And he actually gave me a judgment to remove the guardianship from the father and give it to the mother. And it was upheld by the Court of Cassation in Dubai. And that was the only case that was ever used as a precedent until 2023. When we got in an amendment, which is Decree 52, that says guardianship of education is a mother's guardianship. And the word guardianship is never given to a mother in Islam under Muslim law. So under Muslim Sharia, Islamic Sharia. So it's very interesting to see all these developments, all this progress for the Muslims and for the non-Muslims. And actually, for those of you who are non-Muslims, the same rule will apply to mothers as far as guardianship is concerned, because whatever is not mentioned and not provided for in the two laws, which are the Abu Dhabi law on one hand and the federal law on the other hand, that are mainly for non-Muslims and expatriates in Abu Dhabi, would actually be in the main law of the land, which is Personal Status Law 28 of 2005, that is mainly for Muslims. But whatever the law is void on, those two laws will actually be referred to in that law, which we now call the law of the land.
Wow. You made new law here.
See, because you have to think about it, Gordon. I was a lawyer when literally the courts in the UAE shifted from Sharia courts to civil courts of personal status. So even the word Shari'iyya, al-Mahakim al-Shari'iyya, was removed from the panels, from the boards, and it became called Mahkamat al-Ahwal al-Shakhsiyya, which actually is said in a more of a civil manner. So when I came to these courts, the judges were actually even new to this whole law. We grew up together in this specific shift, and it wasn't easy for anyone to understand what to do then. So it took some time until everyone got used to it. And I always mention this, and my father comes to my mind, God bless his soul, passed away a long time ago. And I always said to the courts, whenever he was asked to sit on that panel to look at the new law for the personal status, he would say, I'm against it. You either go full-fledged with a Sharia that has no law in it, because Sharia is a law, is the law for Muslims, or you just adopt a civil law. Take us away from the hybrid law. Take us away from Sharia being merged into a book with a civil law. Because this is not what we want for our families, not what we want for our communities. And the problem is that so far, Egypt started with its first law of the hybrid law. Jordan followed suit.
Yeah,
And then,
let me interrupt because I want to make sure I understand. When you say hybrid law, do you mean Sharia rules in some areas and civil rules in other? Do you mean that you mean that the civil law is inspired by Sharia, or what exactly is hybrid?
so we always said that this law is based on Sharia. The fact that it's based on Sharia means that it is adopted its soul from Sharia, which is not exactly the right thing to do. You either have a fully fledged Sharia applied by Sharia taught people, taught judges, and just deliver it as per the Sharia without involving the procedural law, where the civil law, when it was brought this procedural law. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a woman who came to court and said to the judge, Your Honor, my husband is not paying for my children's food. We have nothing to eat. He's not paying. Previously in the Sharia courts, the judge will ask the husband to appear before him and say, oh, so you're not paying for your children's food. They have nothing to eat. I'm not going to feed them. I'm not here to feed your children. So before he left, he would be handcuffed, brought in, or whatever. Like I'm giving the extreme thing, but you're not paying, get his car, it's outside. Sell the car, give her money. It was actually dealt with in that manner because the procedural law had nothing to do with it. But when you get the civil law and you get the procedures inside it, now I see women who are
I see what you're saying. So you're making the distinction between procedural law and substantive law, and it may be saying that the Sharia isn't. I want to be respectful, and I want to tread carefully because I'm not here. I'm not.
You have to understand,
I just want to say
actually, when you do not bind judges with a procedural law, you're actually giving them a free hand to do what they need to do as per the case that they see in front of them.
Yes.
When it comes to procedural law, I have women who come to the court, I see them, and they ask the judge for nafaqa, which is actually the money that she needs to give food to her children, nafaqa, child maintenance. It takes at least 3 months with the conciliation, another 2 months before you get a hearing with a judge.
Oh gosh.
And for God's sake, I mean, honestly, a woman who's saying, I don't have money to feed my children. I'm not a working mother. I've never had a job. I don't have income. The idea here is that people live here, their family is here, their mothers are here, fathers. But when you talk about expatriates, you're talking about a completely different scenario. You have people here who don't have backup. And literally there is no legal aid. What am I going to say to a woman? Go to a shelter? Because in the shelter, at least you'll get your children fed. The shelter does not It's not random. They don't take any person in, because the shelters, we have a shelter in women's shelter, women and children shelter, which is the Dubai Women Association, Dubai Women and Children Association, Child Association. Then we have institution, I don't know what they call it, it's muassasa, we call it in Arabic. And then there's one in Abu Dhabi, there's one in Sharjah. But these shelters are not gonna take a woman who's just gonna come in unless she is abused, she's been subject to violence at home and her children. So the issues at hand are actually probably bigger than everyone. But what is the solution? It is something yet to be seen. Because honestly, Gordon, this is not a problem that is mainly in the UAE only. It's worldwide. I sit with lawyers in England, in Jamaica, in Australia, in, I don't know, like you mentioned, worldwide, in the US. And I see the same issues that I struggle with here for clients being struggled also by lawyers in other jurisdictions.
Now, let me ask you, it sounds like 2005 was sort of a trigger year or a fulcrum year. What spurred the evolution of law in the UAE? What made this rethink?
You would be surprised. Actually, the main problem that the UAE always had is the ratings that we get worldwide on the judicial system, on the rule of law, on many issues. And the fact that we had only Sharia courts got people to think twice about even coming to the UAE to live. And I, as an expert who appeared before many judges worldwide, so I was always the expert who provided expert evidence to English, Australian, American, French judges. A question I still remember, an English judge, he asked me that question on a case that involved an abduction of a child by a father who actually remained in the UAE while the mother had to leave the country. The English mother had to go back to England, and he kept the child here and with a travel ban, and he wouldn't send her back to England. And the judge asked me one question, that was the English High Court's family. And he said, so Diana, when you say Sharia, and you say a law based on Sharia, should I understand that this is purely a Sharia law that, uses the Islamic principles? And I said, Your Honor, if I only told you how much Sharia gives to women in rights, you would not want to even think that Sharia is not the way to go. It's the problem with Sharia is the interpretation that has not yet been settled among the scholars of Islam. So this is where it gets, things get lost. So the civil law came to just make it more balanced, affirmed. So this is what we're doing. If you have a problem with nafaqa, you will have to go through the law. Okay, so the law actually takes evidence of nafaqa, procedures in the court forever. Can we make it shorter? Using the same law, using the same court system that applies our civil procedure law? No. But how to go about it? The misconception is great, but the idea here is that, this is what we have now, and this is what we can deal with. So let's do make the best out of it.
It's interesting. The UAE is kind of cool, because it evolved. Look, I'm just sort of new here, you know that, but it's a interesting, bizarre, intriguing, and useful hybrid system that has many layers to it. It's almost like Switzerland with the cantons, with Dubai and Abu Dhabi being kind of a duopoly, and then this sort of thin federal layer, and people cooperate and they compete and they adapt and they evolve. It's a fascinating place. You have a dynamism and a flexibility that is always kind of catching me off guard, because I think someone from the outside comes here and they expect something that's a little bit static, but it's not static at all. It's all these moving parts kind
At
of
all.
interacting with each other all the time. Let's get back to our hypothetical here. So they get married, they have a kid, fine, no problem. Now, unfortunately, people get divorced. How does divorce work here if you're non-Muslim, if you're just me? Well,
The
hopefully not me,
non-Muslim
someone like me, not me.
divorce, honestly, this is the breaking news, the breaking of history.
Okay.
Now, non-Muslims can have a no-fault divorce. I swear to you, Gordon, you should see how many people come to my office and they just stand there and they say, so she's actually divorcing me, a no-fault divorce, and I can't stop her.
Mhm.
A woman comes, are you serious? He's just divorcing me? I have nothing to say to the judge. I can't even say a word. I can't say that it's not fair that I'm like, no, it's a no-fault divorce and it's pronounced in one hearing. That's all it takes. Unless you're fighting what we call here jurisdiction or application of a foreign law, which is the law of the parties, in the federal court. So that's again when we're talking about Abu Dhabi on one hand and the rest of the UAE courts on one hand. So the idea here is that Abu Dhabi did not leave it up to parties to rely or ask the court to apply their law, their foreign law. The UAE courts, the other UAE courts, decided that let's presume an Indian couple. They come to the court. They're not going to come, of course. The husband comes to the court and he wants to divorce his wife, a no-fault divorce, and they're Indians. And of course, the court should divorce them because no-fault divorce does not require anything. It's just a couple of documents that are presented to the court, submitted to the court to show that they've been married and the marriage was legal, and now the husband wants to divorce. Now the wife goes around, shops around with the lawyers, and they tell her, why don't you use the law of your country, the law of the marriage, the law of the parties? And then she goes to court and she says to the judge, I want the divorce to be as per the law of India. There's nothing called the law of India. The law of India is the Hindus have their own law, the Christians have their own law, the Muslims have their own law. So whatever she is, whether she's a Muslim, whether she's a Christian or she's a Hindu, she will come to court and bring the law to apply it by the court. So this is the only exception to the no-fault divorce as a fast track, straightforward, pronounced in one hearing, is being able to say the court has no jurisdiction, or I'm asking the court to apply my foreign law.
Okay, now just what if he's from Russia and she's from India? He's Christian and she's Hindu. What law do you apply?
I like that. There is no law to apply.
Which one's going to apply?
There's no law to apply. It's only the UAE no-fault divorce, because in the event that the parties are from different laws, then there is no way the court will agree to apply a foreign law.
So if you have diversity between the parties and international interreligious marriage, the courts just say, look, there's no reason to decide on either one, so we're not going to use either one. We're just going to use the default.
The default, which is a no-fault divorce pronounced in one hearing.
Got it. Okay, now let's talk about property division. Let's talk about alimony or property division, child support, and prenups and postnups, because they're all kind of related. So what happens? Let's take the case where you don't have an agreement and you don't have any kids. Let's do the most simple one. Man and woman get married, they didn't sign anything, they have no kids, and they get divorced. What happens to the property?
Okay, so they get divorced. If there was a prenup, the court will uphold the prenup immediately. If there was no prenup, then the court will apply its own law. And there's again the difference between Abu Dhabi law on one hand and the federal law on the other hand. Abu Dhabi law has gone around it in a more specific, practical way. it talks about 25% of the last, it's actually a maximum, a minimum of 25%, and the maximum is not actually set even in the law. So a 25% is a minimum of the last salary of the husband, here, because he doesn't even have to be a father. That is in terms of spousal alimony for the woman. And in the UAE, in the rest of the law, the federal law, it's actually just like, it depends on the wealth of the husband, taking into consideration a list of at least 7 to 8 points, which talk about how much did the wife contribute to the end of the marriage, what is her age, what is her, if she was working or not working, so everything to do with a discretion that the judge would have to look at all these points and consider how much money would she need to either go on with her life, if she's a woman like beyond the age of 50 or 60, or to try to build her life until she gets a job and she comes back to the workplace. How many years, The idea here is that both laws require the intervention of an expert. The judge will not be that person to sit and look into the calculations and how much, and based on this, it's left to an expert. And these experts are actually appointed by the court.
This is fascinating. Okay. And then I think I'm hearing that prenups are generally enforceable and applied by the courts.
Yes, and actually that's what the law states. In the event that there is a prenup shall apply.
Got it.
In the absence of a prenup, the law shall apply.
Okay, and now in California, where I'm from, a prenup has to be sort of just and reasonable, and the courts sort of don't like them. And if they're too hard on one of the parties, the court has a lot of discretion to throw it out. What is the attitude towards prenups in the UAE?
Well, it comes as is. The UAE is not the right jurisdiction to try to challenge a prenup or say it wasn't done the right way. As long as you've signed up to that thing, dear woman, you've actually accepted it. The difference is
I think any woman getting married where the husband asks for a prenup should probably talk to you.
They do talk to me, trust me.
They should probably keep talking to you. And any woman watching this is about to get married, we're getting a piece of paper put in front of you. I think you should immediately talk to Diana. That's my
okay. The idea here is that in Abu Dhabi, if you go on the system of the ADJD, you will see the marriage contract being called a prenup, which actually alarms me because it's not right. A marriage contract is not a prenup, but somehow they just called it a prenup. And that's what I try to explain. No, it's not right. A prenup is an agreement that is entered between two parties before they get married. And usually in other jurisdictions, some of the jurisdictions, it has to be sometime at least for like 60 days or 90 days, and sometimes even more extended as far as time frames is required. So because we are still, I want to use the word crawling in this new system, you have to understand this whole thing is new for us. New for us, judges, legislator, councils, so everybody. This is so new to us that some of the UAE lawyers until now, they just tell me, no, this could not have happened. And I'm like, okay, it's happened 2021, we're done. We should get over it by saying that, because we don't really know, especially the lawyers who are above the age of like 60. How can you actually get them I don't know, like what the word. Yes, exactly. To learn something so new. It takes someone with the newer type of education, someone who's studied abroad, who has watched much of the Hollywood movies on on breakups and
They're,
divorces. I
they're
always
watching
tell my
Suits,
clients,
right?
honestly, Gordon, I always tell my clients when they come, like, especially when the ones that have really, really serious problems with their marriages. And I'm like, you should watch The War of the Roses. I swear to God, I watched this movie when I was so young,
That's
and
it.
it actually scared me to the extent that my father would say, Diana, there's this guy from a very good family. He's like, and they're actually proposing, and I'm like, no, Dad, it's good. Did you see The War of the Roses? And my father would say, "But I'm living with your mom, we're married. Have you seen this happening in our house?" And I'm like, no, but you should see that movie. And my father was like, stop her from watching movies. She's not the wrong person to watch movies, because I was like, really, and the many other movies, but they were actually based on true stories. You have to understand, some of these relationships in marriages are so toxic to the extent that people would want to get out of their way to hurt each other to an extent that
I
is
remember that
so
movie.
evil.
Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner.
Yes.
I remember I saw it, and he forced a situation where he was living in the house with her, and like it shows
You
a
remember
romance.
that movie? I swear, until now, when I have like some free time on my hand, I would just like go with my old, album of movies, and especially the legal ones. It's like, but you have to understand, and it's still happening. I see some of the most toxic marriages that you could ever. I mean, if I want to turn this office into the drama series that could be the bestseller, you would not believe what you would hear and see, physically and literally.
All right, so for anyone watching this, we're gonna do 1,001 Hamada tales of different
Oh
relationships.
God, 1,001, yeah, that would have to be.
I'm just improvising, but that sounds possible. Okay, this is kind of making me all nervous because I'm trying to breathe. Just got married. Okay, now in the US we have post-nuptial agreements. We have agreements you can sign after you get married. Do you have those in UAE?
Yes, the post-nuptial agreements are actually done in Dubai courts exclusively. Abu Dhabi does not have post-nups, they're not accepting it, and there's no way to access the system even to register them. So we're relying on Dubai courts, which has been really flexible and accommodating, and people are entering into so many post-nuptial agreements. We call them in Arabic استمرارية زواج, which means the continuity of the marriage. And this is where the judges actually here would like people to agree terms. Listen, you have a problem with your husband, he's never at home on time, he's not giving time to the children, to yourself. Listen, man, you wanna go with this استمرارية زواج, post-nuptial agreement, you have to comply with the term that your wife has put in it. Otherwise, she can ask for divorce. And the judge would give her everything and anything in this post-nup. If you actually fail to abide by what she has been asking for. Now, it's not as simple as that. Some people will just come here and do their post-nups for the pure purpose of guaranteeing that whatever they brought into the marriage of assets are theirs. So the idea here is that this is a post-nuptial agreement, Diana. Yeah, okay. Upon the marriage being, impossible to maintain, and upon the breakup of the marriage, I want to guarantee that I've worked for like 30 years of my life, 20 years of my life. I haven't, made something for myself. So he is now buying me a property. So in order for that property to be transferred into my name upon the breakup of the marriage. So maybe it is a way for women to guarantee their lives after the divorce in a way where they know substantially, really that this is what they're going to be getting. Because if you leave it up to the court,
that's interesting.
You may get, you may not get, because you're leaving it up to a discretionary power of a court. And so many issues will come in place. So this is what I always advise my clients who are of the age of like over 40, getting into their 50s. If you haven't been working, if you haven't made your own money, if you please consider a postnuptial agreement. It's very important.
It's
And
kind
I
of
would like
interesting.
to
You're using it in a way that I'm not familiar with. In my mental model of a postnup is that usually the guy is trying to preserve, well, not always, but just for example, the guy's either trying to preserve what he earned during the marriage, or the woman is coming into the marriage with property and trying to preserve it. But you're giving me a different angle, which is someone's getting to a certain age and maybe they want to keep the marriage going, but they want to do it in a secure manner. So maybe it's a way of preserving the marriage, I think is what I'm hearing.
Okay, so let me tell you how it differs here.
Okay.
First of all, the law here does not entitle the man to anything. This is a law that states that a divorcee, a woman, is entitled. It doesn't say a man, a divorcee man. It says
Tricky. I didn't realize the UAE was so pro-feminist. Okay, fine, go ahead.
It's actually the way the law believe that it should be, the legislator believe that this is the right way. You know that I have met a woman lately who is considering relocating to the UAE. She got a great job and her husband refused to make the relocation because the law here does not entitle him to anything, while he's gonna come here with a less salary, with less potential of making money. So he said, you know, in the end, I'm gonna end up paying you money in a court where I'm not entitled to anything and you're entitled to everything. So now the balance is not really perfect. And I'm actually concerned about something else. When we call ourselves here as a UAE abiding by human rights, we should not have anything in the law that advantages a certain, the one sex over the other. So the fact that we're only entitling women here by those two new laws is actually not the right thing.
I tend to agree with you. Sorry, to roll back earlier in the conversation, you made the point about traditionally the men are the guardianship of the kid. And now it's the woman that's the guardianship of the kid, but that's biased also. Maybe it's the right person should be the guardian of the kid.
Okay. So the guardianship is a principle of Islam.
Okay.
So the guardianship is mainly in the 28th of 2005 based on the fact that we are a Sharia-based law. And that has always been the case. The only guardianship that was taken from the father, given to the mother, mainly is now purely for education. What
so
about the... Yes.
Interesting.
It was just taken out, excluded. But would you think of the other two laws, which are the non-Muslim laws, if you want to call them non-Muslim laws, we are talking about a guardianship that has not been in any way tackled with a certain provision. So there's nothing. It says joint custody.
Yes.
And it's presumed that the guardianship is also taken jointly, performed jointly, exercised jointly. Until now, this is the understanding that we have, that the guardianship is mainly part of that provision in the law which talks about joint custody.
Mm-hmm.
Have I had a case where a guardianship is a matter that is still considered by the court? No. But I would tell you that I would be actually concerned because I know that the judges will not see the word custody applying to guardianship. Because remember, the roles of a father and a mother under our mainland law, under the law that actually is a Muslim's law, separates the roles of a custodian and a guardian. It always talks about a mother as a custodian and a father as a guardian. So the idea in the back of the mind of all our judges is that a guardian is a father, it's not a mother. And the fact that they have joint custody does not actually take the guardianship from the father. It should still be there. So this is still a matter that I would see
That is
now, sitting here with Gordon, that this is a matter that's gonna be a matter of further disputes and further legislation.
Let me ask you a question about the legal system in general. Is there a two questions? Do the courts or I'm just using my California model because that's all I have. So in California, we have the California State Bar, and it's every practicing lawyer is a member, and you have to comply with ongoing education requirements. And there's a certain dialogue that happens between the lawyers and the courts where we kind of educate each other, and it's a formalized system. Is there a bar of all the lawyers? Is there an organization of all the lawyers in the UAE? And how does information about the changes get out to the lawyers so that they're current on whatever the law is? Because you mentioned several times that you almost get ambushed because things are moving so quickly. So what's the structure?
So in the UAE, there is no bar association as per what you know of the bar, the way the bar is supposed to be. We have here the Emirates Lawyers Association, which is an NGO, not-for-profit, and it is actually set up by the UAE, the government of the UAE, to have the lawyers, having a common forum for discussing their matters, issues of the practice, training, developing the areas that would need, further development. But we don't have, through the Emirates Lawyers Association, yet a way to directly engage with the legislator. The legislator in the UAE is still with the Ministry of Justice. It's, the laws are issued by certain panels. We call them لجنة تشريعية, لجان تشريعية, which is committees. So the legislative committees. There is one in the Ministry of Justice in Abu Dhabi, which is based in Abu Dhabi, of course. And every emirate has its own legislative committee for its own laws. Remember, we're federal, just like the US. So you have laws on the federal level, and then you have laws in every UAE emirate independently. For the lawyers, we're literally just like Gordon. We wake up in the morning, we see a law, great. It's actually in the media. We hear of it, we know of it. We actually, like today morning, I was driving my car, and then a friend, a lawyer, he said to me, Diana, have you heard of this ta'meem? Like ordinance, like it's being issued in, I don't know, this year. If you've heard of it, if you know of it, please, can you send it to me? This is what we do.
Wow.
Like, as lawyers, whoever is looking for, luckily we have a WhatsApp group for the Jam'iyya, for the association. And some of the other lawyers have actually created their own WhatsApp groups just to be there, to know what's happening, to know about an executive regulation that was issued. The one thing that I would always say for the lawyers like us, because we know most of the stuff when we go to court, this is where we get all information, literally. But there is the official gazette of the UAE, where the laws are actually published and would come into effect. Now, before the law is published in the official gazette, and until it comes into effect, you can know of it only in a newspaper, social media, or if you know at court that there has been some talk about it.
Okay. Wow, interesting. Do you have an opportunity? You kind of maybe answer my question already. Do lawyers have any opportunity to impact law or the development of the law before it shows up in the Gazette?
Well, not directly, but I know from let's give the UAE some credit now, because the UAE is a very, very small, like, young state. So until the Federal National Council was set up, we didn't hear about anything to do with laws. The legislator will just issue the law, everybody will know about it. Previously, there were a number of lawyers that were always asked to join the legislative committees in the Emirates to just take their opinion or just have them on board. Now, I don't hear of the legislative committees asking lawyers to take part in actually issuing the laws, discussing the laws. But I know from time to time that the Federal National Council does, in fact, discuss some of the drafts of the laws that are brought to Federal National Council for their review and opinion. They do discuss them with the ministries that are relevant to the laws, and they do, take some discussion on it. Now, on the other side also, I know that some of the lawyers are asked from time to time to meet with the regulator if there is a law that is still considered, and some amendments even. So there is a way, but it's not written. It's not coded.
It's maybe
it's not coded. It's not something that you would just go to the law and say, the lawyers will be part of this. There is a legislative agenda. Like I wrote in the National in 2012 about how much we need a legislative agenda. And I in the National at that time, I had my own, it was a page that was like, opinion, it was called opinion. And the legal opinion was my legal opinion for probably, I don't remember, probably 12, 13, issues. And one of them, I actually spoke about a legislative agenda that is so required, but until now we don't have it. The judiciary here and the legislative, body of the UAE has not put in place saying a law needs to be issued, a law needs to be reviewed, a law, you can't find it. If you look for it,
and I wasn't asking the question from a critical place, because again, I'm using my own reference. The process, there's a quote in the United States, which is, laws are like sausages. They may come out okay, but you really don't want to see how they're made. Right? Because the process that goes into it is just so disgusting that when you look at the end result, even if it's nice, you're gonna be thinking about the process. They're like, oh, I don't want to eat that sausage, or I don't want to.
Well, let me tell you one thing, Gordon, and that is actually another credit for the UAE. Sometimes you wonder if issuing a law needs to be taken so publicly, engaging advocacy. I mean, I know in the US it's a Congress. It's just something that would never actually get anywhere unless you have everything that takes for a law to be passed. And you usually have all these people that pay money, that, it involves much more than we ever think of. And that's where the dirty work will be actually done. But in the UAE, a law is issued because it is needed, it's required, and it is done in the most discreet way, discreet manner, and it's published. What I notice here is that the laws are amended later according to trial and error.
I was actually
later.
So sorry if you don't mind. I was actually going to make that comment also, just from the crypto perspective. What I've seen is the Dubai set up Vara. Vara seemed to have, hopefully they don't keep me out for saying this, but it seemed to have some real startup issues. It seemed disorganized, slow, non-responsive. The stuff they came out with, I'm like, what is this? But they kept on making it better. Normally when a bureaucracy gets formed, it solidifies, and it's very hard to change it, but there's been a lot of dynamism. And so that made me kind of realize that the way things happen here is, from my impression as an outsider, is they do the best they can. It's okay. They throw it out on the wall, and then they start using it in real life, and based on real life, people either say this is great, or they complain, or they scream, or they have conversations or whatever, and then the thing seems to evolve until you end up with something that's pretty good over time. You just need to be comfortable with the fact that when it comes out, it's not gonna be perfect, but at least you have something to work with. And to your point, you're not stuck with 5 years of wrangling between lobbyists and the federal layer and the states and everything else. And you don't, it's very hard to get anything done in the US because of this.
Exactly. It's not only in the US. You know exactly what
Or
it
Europe.
takes. Even the Middle East, you know, like how cumbersome it is to actually get a law to even, you know, literally to have a road built. And that's what whoever asks me, how did the UAE manage? And I always say, because
They
you
just
did
do
not.
it. It's
Exactly. You did not need to do all of that to get anything done. All you need is a vision and people who are there to do it. And that is the plus the benefit, the advantage of being in a jurisdiction of this sort. Now, I'm gonna mention this, and it's always like, because I always bring it up, and I actually heard it from a very prominent French lawyer, who's a very good friend. And she once said, Diana, you have to know what Napoleon said when the civil droit du civil de France was actually being, you know, issued, being legislated. And about a specific point, which was cohabitation. England has already, at that point, England has already put on rights for a woman who would cohabitate and who hasn't had a marriage. And then Napoleon was told, but you know, in England, en Angleterre, they already allow it, and they give women some rights and benefits and, you know, alimony. And he said, at that point, he said, those who do not comply by the law shall not benefit from it. So those women who choose not to comply with the law of the marriage should not benefit from it. And then, of course, later, the droit civil de France had to be progress and develop further, and cohabitation became something, you know, that would be considered. But this is the idea. You have to think of the frame of mind of that person who was at that point when the law was issued. It's them, it's these people who are sitting, and I always tell them, I tell everyone, the people who sit on a table to write a law for women, and excuse me, all men out there, would never know what women want. If that table does not have a woman or more than one woman on it, the law will never address every issue that a woman faces and is challenged with being a woman.
I like it. So how's the UAE? Like, if we ever go into a danger zone, let me know. But how is the UAE doing in terms of having women at the table?
So I know for a fact that the legislative committees in the UAE, some of the names, like in Dubai, are actually, you know, there. It says that the Dubai Legislative Committee is formed of the following, and the names, they're all men. In the Ministry of Justice, I don't even know who are these committees, but I haven't heard of women being there. But the Federal National Council of the UAE is 50% women. And the fact that we have laws going through the Federal National Council for review in order for these laws to be issued gives now finally the ability to women to actually look at these laws, review these laws, because 50% of the Federal National Council of the UAE is women. And it's unprecedented, and it doesn't exist anywhere in the world.
No, that doesn't exist in the
There's
US.
a parliament that has 50% women. No, it's not something that I know of.
That's great. Now, let me, so mashallah, I love that answer.
Mashallah.
Now,
Mashallah.
let's continue our hypothetical. Now, we gotta get to the sad part of our story, which is what happens to when you die here?
Oh, okay. Well, things used to be quite messy previously, but now things are really in place. It's so amazingly clear. A non-Muslim can have a will. A will can be registered either in the IFC, which is a place like, you know, the forum that I believe has put everything in place, except that it is exclusively for non-Muslims.
Okay.
So it just doesn't accept Muslims to register a will with the IFC. And I was actually one of the members of the committee that issued the first rules on the DIFC wills registry, and I wrote literally the whole chapter on children in terms of guardianship. So this is something I'm so proud of, and I really think that until today, I love the fact that I wrote about the guardianship in terms of succession planning for the DIFC. The other registrar that is available for wills is the ADJD. And ADJD is actually wide open for Muslims and non-Muslims to have their wills registered as long as they are non-locals. They cannot be UAE nationals.
Okay. So our Indonesian Muslim couple could
go to
Abu Dhabi
ADJD.
Judicial District.
Yes.
I guess it is.
So ADJD would have the registrar to register a will for a Muslim. Now, what happens then? Okay, the will is there, amazing. This person, the testator, passes away. The most important thing about a will is how to enforce it, how to execute it, how to put it in place for the heirs. So the DIFC has a special court. It's the probate court of DIFC. And this is where things are done the proper way. It's a judge in DIFC, a probate judge, and they immediately look into it and they immediately process it. Now, the ADJD, until now, has its own court, which it's called the civil court, but it's not fully equipped to look into these wills as probate. Probate is a specific word that is used especially with wills being executed, wills being enforced, because there's usually an executor. In some cases, there are guardians, there are minors. So these are the issues that the probate order of DIFC does deal with in a more like, coherent way. And then again, of course, I would always advise people to go for DIFC, especially if they have assets worldwide, because it's so different to take a probate order from DIFC to an English court or to an Australian court.
That's a great point. Okay, so you can use your will. You can set up your testamentary intent for your international property using a UAE will that's been lodged with the DIFC. And, it will be respected by other courts because it has an English law background.
By all means. This is the advantage. I'm not saying that the ADJD wills don't do the job, especially if the properties are in the UAE. Especially that we have this protocol between the courts to respect and, enforce each other's judgments. But I would always be kind of like wary of things, and I'm as a lawyer, I just think a million times before I do anything. And I would say, a non-Muslim, you live in the UAE, have a DIFC will. I know it's expensive.
What? I'm sorry.
A DIFC will.
Okay.
Because I know it's expensive, and people just immediately think, but it always makes me laugh, Gordon, because when I sit with clients and they say, oh, but the DIFC will is so expensive, and I say, why are you writing a will?
Well, sorry, before we get into how expensive is it?
Exactly. To relieve, to actually find a way for your children, for your family, not to struggle with actually getting the rights, their inheritance. Is that 10,000 or 15,000 dirhams going to actually make you think twice?
Wait, I'm sorry, that's it? It's 10 or 15,000 dirhams?
Yeah, 10 or 15 if it's a mirror.
You made it sound like it was $100,000. Okay.
No. But I tell you, people still argue that, and they actually ask, whether the ADJD will is actually less expensive. But I would actually see the value more for non-Muslims. I know for Muslims, the ADJD is where to go, definitely, because they have nowhere else. And another tip that is so precious, and not everyone would know, because not everyone reads the laws, even know where they are. But the fact is, now, in the latest amendment of the 28th of 2005, Muslims are allowed to have a will for an heir, which actually means a Muslim is not allowed to write a will for his own family, or his own heirs, his own inheritors, whether a man or a woman is the testator. Now, the law allows a Muslim to actually write a will for his own heirs, which is unheard of. But it is available now, and it can be done before the local courts.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask a loaded question. Can a Saudi come here and obviously Muslim, obviously Sunni, and do a DIFC will for his kids?
Of course
No.
not. It's Muslim.
Okay.
Can do an ADJD will.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant to say. An 80, okay, so, and by the way, 80, it's Abu Dhabi Judicial District Department. Okay, got it. Judicial Department. Okay, so can a Saudi, sorry, can a Saudi come to Abu Dhabi and do a will for his heir at the ADJD?
Yes. As long as the properties are within the UAE, as long as it is within the jurisdiction of the UAE. I haven't seen it yet, and I don't encourage my clients to do it yet, because I'm not really sure what is going to happen in terms of disputes. So let's say he has someone else, like a second wife, or children from another marriage, or whatever.
The usual.
They may they do usually. They will come and dispute it, and for the fact of being a Muslim. Now, how does that play? How does that interact? How does that become, subject to a court decision? That would be still not clear. But now, with the law that allows a testator to give within the third a will to his own heirs, I think that is a way out of what we used to see as serious disputes. So instead of just writing a will, just state it as, this is a will within the third of my assets, and I'm writing it to these heirs. That's it. And of course, things would just go on.
Now, let me ask you, we covered a lot. I think the short version for anyone watching is enjoy the intellectual exercise, but definitely call Diana with any practical question, because I'll tell you from personal experience, it's always the nuance and always the detail. So, don't think you're so smart. It's good to understand her, but in the end, look, I'm a lawyer. I did estate planning in the United States before I came here and did crypto. I was out of my depth. Okay, that's why she and I worked together. So, like anyone watching this, just take the word of warning. But just final question, because this kind of relates to my legal practice before. So under English law, you have the concept of a trust, and that's
Yes.
much more of a common law concept and much less of a European civil law concept. I think in Islamic law you have the waft, if I'm saying it correctly, but I don't know if there's a trust concept here. Is there such a, I know there's a foundation. Is there such a thing as a trust or something like a trust?
Well, there is a trust law. There's a trust law in DFC, there's a trust law in ADGM.
Okay.
ADGM is not ADJD. ADGM is the offshore, the English courts in
Global
Abu Dhabi.
markets.
But I have to say, the trust law is not for everyone and is not for everything. The trust law is quite specific, and you need actually with the trust law to have, if I'm not going to say lots of money, I'm going to say like really major and substantial assets and substantial wealth to actually consider a trust. And plus, again, I'm always concerned about the trust not being recognized onshore because it still has its, it's still crippling as far as an onshore jurisdiction and understanding of the trust is concerned. So I would actually be very
Cautious.
cautious whenever the word trust comes in the discussion. A
Okay, but
foundation.
it's good to know that there is such a thing. So if you have substantial assets and you're thinking about trust, you at least know to look, even if the answer is no.
But please, I would rather have this word out. If
Okay.
you are considering a trust for a family and you have substantial wealth, business in the UAE, consider the alternative to the trust, which is the family business. The family business law is now exactly a trust, but it's a law and it is onshore. And the family business law is out of all the potential disputes and the potential wars that usually took place in these courts forever and ever among family members. Having the family business law is your way out. Definitely is your way out.
This is brand new information to me. Is the family business law available to non-Muslims also?
For everyone. Everyone is subject to the family business law as long as you have a business and your family is part of it.
This could be a whole nother show, but we're not going to do it today.
And you know what? I'd like to speak about the family business, but this is the last word. Whatever I said today to Gordon, and honestly, it has been one of the most exciting and interesting and entertaining interviews I've had in a while. And this is called a podcast.
By the way, that's why my subscribers are going up. I'm getting lots of. I'm serious. I love
the fact that I'm on a podcast.
50,000 viewers.
And I have to say that Gordon actually gave me this microphone as a gift for the show. So it's amazing. Thank you. But if you are really looking for information on some of the subjects that were mentioned today, do follow my Thursday space. It's a space where I speak in English and in Arabic on matters of marriage, divorce, children in this jurisdiction. So if you're interested, it's on YouTube, it's Diana Hamade, Attorneys at Law, and it's Thursday space. I can tell you there is so much to listen to, and it will be your way of finding your steps in this jurisdiction.
This is amazing. So we're gonna include all the links in the show notes to the video. You'll provide them to me. I'll include all the links. Diana, I'm gonna ask you right while I'm recording. I want to organize a lunch. I'm doing a lot of these events. I want to organize a lunch where you present to the group about the family business law, because I don't think anyone knows about this. So,
of course.
Okay, you're consider yourself recruited.
A pleasure.
Wow, amazing. You know what? This was a nice long show. Diana, thank you so much. I know you're busy. I know you're awesome.
No, it's been a pleasure, honestly. And thanks for everyone who's there with us today. And Gordon, we'll see you next time.
You will. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you. Amazing. Hold on one second here.
Bye-bye.